Greetings, ladies and melodies, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Momma Bear, written by TRMerc. Kislak smiled as he approached the closest structure to his landing site. His people, the Gorklaks, have a tradition of invading the newest race to join the galactic stage. He had built up his forces, and as luck would have it, a new race appeared. Humans. Not wanting to waste time on pointless intel reports, he mobilized his forces and traveled to the closest human colony to Gorklak space. While infiltrating using cloaking technology only the Relaria could detect, he made his landing. Landing a 10-member team, he approached his target, a small human structure next to a larger one. The smaller structure was odd. Bright pink walls and a brown roof with a design similar to the larger one. He figured the large structure was a multi-dwelling, while this was for a single family. It's a good start for a raid. He took 5 of his team and entered the structure, and smiled at his luck. The door to the structure had no visible lock as he pushed it open and went inside. Once in, he noticed how roomy it was for a home. No visible seating, but humans must be about the size of a Gorklak from how things were scaled. Once inside, he heard the screams, which were always a pleasure to his ears, more so when it came from the young of the various species. He looked down, seeing a Relaria child, a Solvarian, and several more. All races the Gorklaks had captured planets of recently, and one species he didn't recognize, which towered over the others. "You there," he shouted, pointing at the tall pinkish being. "Are you human?" Getting a small nod from the frightened being. Smiling, Big Kislak stood up more. "I am Kislak, and you are now my prisoner. I assume that you're in charge of taking care of these young," pointing at the non-humans who were trying to hide. The human shook her head no. "What? You're not? Then why are they here?" With a shaky voice, the human spoke. They are my friends. They came here for my birthday party." Kislak looked confused. He had heard of some adult members of the species being friendly with young of their species, but only 1 or 2 whom they took a liking to. There were several in addition to the human race. Also, birthday party. Was this human celebrating their birth? Who does that? It was about this time that Kislak felt a chill run over his carapace. He had ignored the transmission from the Gorklak homeworld, assuming that they would order him to stop, to steal his glory. With the last one they said they were disavowing his actions. Then he heard it, the loud yell of an angry beast. "Susie!" And time started to slow down, or at least he thought that. When he looked at the clock in the building, he noticed that it was painted on the wall, and it didn't actually tell the time. There were other things that also weren't actually there, like the food preservation box, the food preparation box, and the washing station. He heard the sounds of screams from his forces outside and blaster fire. "What is that? Kill it! Die! It won't die!" Turning his head, he saw Zodakar fly past the window, which had no transparent planes inside to keep the elements out. There was no floor either, as he was standing on a soft plant that covered the ground. He turned to look at Frolia, standing next to him and where the door used to be. The door was ripped off the frame, and a hand as big as his head reached in, grabbed Frolia, and pulled her outside with a scream. He turned around and saw 2 pillars of what he assumed were legs, and Frolia landing 10 feet from where she had been standing. Next was a popping sound, and suddenly the roof of the structure was being pulled off, and staring down at him and his team was a giant human, or more accurately, an adult human. Mos Darrow fired a shot, hitting the human in the head, but she just looked down angrier than before as she reached in and grabbed Maz Darrow and then threw him to the ground, and Zodakar heard the unmistakable sound of the crunch of carapace, most likely meaning that he was dead or dying. Rylak threw his blaster down and put his 4 arms up. "I surrender!" and was hit in the face with the human's hand with all digits bound tightly. Rylak fell to the ground, most likely dead. Everything was surreal at the moment as Zokadar looked back up and what he heard from behind him. "My mommy is gonna kick your ass." which was interrupted by language from what was most likely Susie's mom. "Sorry, Mummy." Zokadar saw the predatory look on the rampaging beast, and that was the last thing he remembered before everything went black. The stillness of it all was peaceful compared to the utter horror he'd felt moments ago. At least, it felt like moments ago. The silence was broken by the rhythmic beeping that, as he listened, sounded like a gork-clack heartbeat and some words. "That is what you get when you mess with a—" The words faded in and out of focus. Opening his eyes, Zokadar looked around at the massive room in which he now found himself. Trying to lift his limbs was met with resistance. Looking, he noticed bindings were holding him to the bed, and a different human was standing there. This one was clearly in a military uniform and was watching him. Without a word, the human left. After a while, a group of humans entered. The one from before and two others, one completely dressed in white and the other in the same outfit, but in blue. The two that came in started to look him over, shine a light in his eyes, poke and prod him, and seemed to be checking for any additional injuries. "What's going on? Where am I? What are you doing? Don't touch that!" Before screaming in pain when his antennae were touched. The two laughed. "Could be worse. That is why you don't mess with a—" Before they could finish, another human entered, this one in a military uniform that was clearly more impressive than the one who was watching him before, motioning to the two to leave as they did. This one clearly had some authority. "So, you're finally awake. You were caught." The human paused and gave a chuckle at some kind of joke Zokadar didn't hear. "Trying to invade a toy house." Zokadar froze as he remembered the events that happened right before everything went black. It was a toy house. "Luckily for you, turns out the human skin is resistant to your blaster fire. Gives us a nasty burn, but not much else." Zokadar took a deep breath to calm his nerves. "Got it, don't shoot humans, it just makes them angry." Getting another laugh from the human. These humans were very annoying, as they seemed to laugh at everything. What he said, what they said, when they got shot by the most powerful blasters in the Gorklak Empire. "Where am I?" The human nods. "You're in New Chicago Memorial Hospital, on the planet New Illinois. Don't hold the names against us. I'm from Wisconsin myself. My name is Captain Helden." Zokadar looked as the man looked like he was about to laugh but sighed. "Sorry, Earth's joke. You're under arrest. We weren't told your exact invasion plan, only that a rogue force was coming to attack us and that they were not part of the Gorklak Empire." Zokadar sighs and lays his head down. "We were part of the Empire, but it seems when they decided our defeat was inevitable and they didn't want a retaliatory attack, they decided to leave us at your mercy." The thought that his people, who prided themselves on being aggressive, would turn their backs on him was disheartening, more so than the defeat at such a formidable foe of Susie's mommy. "It is also unfortunate that we happened across one of your race's stronger forces. Tell me, how long has Susie's mommy trained to be that dangerous?" Halden looked confused for a moment, and then smiled. Zokadar was glad that it wasn't a laugh before the captain spoke. Lisa is not part of the Planetary Defense Force. She isn't even part of the civilian police force. She's just a stay-at-home mom." This confused Zokadar, as this woman clearly had some training to take out 10 Gorklaks as if they were nothing. "Impossible! The way she moved, the way she took out my team, there is no way that someone who is a civilian can do that." The general nodded and chimed in. "That's what happens when—" The lack of finishing the sentence started to infuriate Zokadar. "When someone what? I keep hearing that phrase, but no one ever finishes it." The captain opened his mouth to speak, but stopped, then pulled a picture up from a small device and showed it to Zokadar. It was of a human holding up a small fuzzy brown creature that was as big as the human's torso. Behind him was a larger fuzzy brown creature, with a look that Zokadar had seen before. The same cold chill came back. "That's what happens when you mess with a Momma Bear." End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.